Hello, welcome to the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting. We have a procedural bylaw matter to deal with before we can conduct the meeting, and I will read the resolution. Just first, there'll be an explanation of why this resolution is on the agenda. The chair of the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting, being Councillor William Riley, was unable to attend this evening's meeting. Additionally, Councillor Bell, who is the vice chair, advised that he was unable to chair the meeting due to the fact that he was unable to attend pre-agenda. Therefore, a presiding chair will need to be appointed, and the following resolution was put forward to appoint Mayor Ganan as presiding chair for this evening's meeting. So item P7023, Deputy Clerk Justin Palov, reappointment of presiding chair. The recommendation reads as follows: that, in accordance with Section 4.3 of the Township's procedural bylaw, Mayor Ganan be appointed as the presiding chair for the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting of Tuesday, October 10th, 2023, due to the absence of the chair, Councillor Riley, and the vice chair, Councillor Bell, being unable to chair the meeting. I will need a mover and a seconder for this motion. Moved by Councillor Rayner, seconded by Councillor Chichok. Now the vote will be open in a second.
So that, Councillor Woodavine, is why the chair was empty. But we did have to go through that. So good evening, everyone. And we are ready to begin this Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting number 8. This is Tuesday, October the 10th, 2023. So just before we get started with the meeting, I want to say that comments can be made from members of the public for a matter that is on the agenda by advising the chair during the request to address an item on the agenda section of the agenda. The public may submit written comments for matters that are on this agenda or any agenda to jpalov@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered as public information and will be read into the public record. And number 3, the meeting will be live streamed as well as recorded and available on the Township's website. So before beginning the public meeting, I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of Niagara Region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. And I'm now going to ask members of committee if there are any disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest on this evening's agenda. Okay. And seeing none, we'll then move to the public meeting. This is a public meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by the Township of West Lincoln. Housekeeping amendments number 7, file number 1601-007-23. The Planning Act requires in Section 34, subsection 12, that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by Council in their consideration. The Planning Act requires through Section 34, subsection 13, that Council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Council for the Township of West Lincoln to the Ontario Land Tribunal, or OLT. So would the clerk please advise the method and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given?
Proper notice was given by way of advertising in the local newspaper on September 14th, 2023, as well as mail circulation to all property owners where there are site-specific zone changes proposed, and email circulation to all relevant agencies and departments on September 18th, 2023.
Thank you. So I'm now going to go to the Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble. Will you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Mr. Treble.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an amendment that the township has done pretty much each year since the new bylaw was put in place. This year, the housekeeping amendment is a little bit smaller than in previous years, so I think that's a sign that the bylaw is getting closer to a model that we feel comfortable with. I will point out, Madam Mayor, that we will run into a bit of a challenge at some point in the future, given the change in the dynamics of the papers and the lack of a newsprint paper of broad circulation. We have to figure out how to properly get notice in. Our notice of public meeting was in the last newsprint version of that particular paper. So notice of decision or notice of passing will be something that staff are going to have to sort out before we get to the point of an approval. So that's just information for a tidbit. In terms of changes, there's a couple that are housekeeping related, and some of them are proactive in nature, attempting to sort of get ourselves ready for the different styles and types of housing that we anticipate as part of the future growth of West Lincoln. So the first one is an amendment to the definition of salvage yard, and that's to bring our definition in line with the regional definition where they issue the licenses. Our definition in our zoning bylaw was not quite the same as the regional licensing definition. Secondly, our industrial zone provisions did not include truck transport terminal as a permitted use concept, yet we have a couple of truck transport terminals in the industrial park. I think that's probably an oversight in the new bylaw, since I know at least one of them has had previous discussions about their ability to operate from there. And as I was speaking with one of the operators on yesterday, Monday, I said, I don't know which other zone we would want such a use in. The industrial zone certainly makes the most sense. So this, to me, is an easy housekeeping update to add a definition and then identify that definition of truck transport terminal as a permitted use in the M1 and M2 zones. Another provision that is changing or will be proposed to be changing as part of the staff's presentation to council will be the height of buildings in the industrial park. I've had discussions with 3 different industrial operators who are looking at the concept of warehousing, and warehousing in this day and age is starting to go up in terms of techniques for storage and whatnot. And so our limited height of 10 meters is no longer adequate to accommodate storage options, and we have a couple of storage facilities and discussions that could very well happen in 2024. And in the one case, at least, they were saying, give me 15 meters at a minimum, but we'd prefer 17. So I'm just simply proposing that we add in a height of 20 meters to make sure we sort of capture what might be there. And I don't want to stand in the way of industry and the ability of industry to grow. So that's when I indicated to the property owner, let me do that as part of a housekeeping amendment if I can get the support of council. That way it's one less application for a planning approval that the individual industrial operator needs to worry about. The next provision that is proposed for amendment, and this one's going to take a bit more work. I've been doing some further investigation. There's actually some correspondence that's been submitted by a planning firm on behalf of Phelps Homes, trying to sort out the 2 accessory dwelling unit concept that the province has imposed upon each municipality, trying to get the bylaw right to accommodate for what's anticipated, mainly in the urban area on full services. A lot of our pressures for accessory dwelling units in the past have been in the agricultural area. So those provisions, I think, will stay, but the provisions inside the urban area of Smithville need to be amended to accommodate either a principal unit in the main building and 2 accessory units in the main building, or 1 accessory unit in the main building plus 1 detached building, or 2 detached buildings. All of those different combinations need to be given consideration. I've just recently stumbled across the work that the town of Innisfil has worked on, so I'm going to compare against that to see how that relates to what we need to do here. But there is a draft attempt, and that's what Phelps Holmes has responded to, so that'll be part of the work that has yet to come back before council as part of a final recommendation. Number 6 in the draft bylaw before you guys tonight for public consideration is changes to the residential zone provisions. Those were reviewed through an architect with GSP Group to identify some modeling in terms of how our provisions worked on the ground by modeling the provisions to see how they work. And there's actually a report attached to this report that shows the modeling work that they did to attempt to say what changes should be made to our bylaw to make those concepts actually function in our township. And Madam Chair, the one other provision that I know of that needs to be amended as well, and it's in here, but it doesn't jump out at you, the height provision. Since we now have one site-specific zoning approval for a 6-story unit in the RH zone, we're proposing just to change that provision to 21.5 meters, such as we did with the Peter Budd bylaw, so that it's across the board now for the urban area on full services. So those, Madam Mayor, are the amendments to date. We have correspondence from Mr. Rob Brower and his engineer about the industrial height. They're attached to this report. The Phelps Holmes report via their consultant came in late on the day on Thursday. It hasn't necessarily been reviewed against my draft bylaw, but it's in the package so that council has seen it. The region has indicated no concerns. Most of the issues are local in nature, so they don't have any concerns with the matter going forward. And I feel I'm missing somebody, but anyways, that's the general essence of the bylaw and the essence of some of the comments that have been received. Despite the lack of attendance here tonight, there is interest in this bylaw. Most of it's been in writing. I think that's it for now, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Director. So that's a good place. That it's been coming to you in writing is really good. I now, of course, by procedure, need to go to ask if there are any oral or written submissions from anyone present in the meeting. And unless Councillor Woodavine is here on that regard, we don't have anyone, but I will go through the procedures anyway. I would like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this public meeting would like to make comments and/or provide written comments, they should do so now. If you are attending virtually and would like to provide comments, you can do so by using one of two options. And I'm going to go to, I don't see anything on the screen, but I'll go to our IT technician to see.
Not seeing any, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So had those people been there and available, then we have a couple of options that we could have used, either using the raise the hand option or using the *9. Had anybody been here, we would have then had them actually provide their information, their name and their address, but we don't have any of that going on. So I'm going to move then, knowing that we've covered that by checking with our director and checking with IT, go to members of committee. So the next portion of the meeting says, do any members of committee have any oral or written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Please note that members of the committee must make their comments now, as the OLT may not consider comments made at any other council or committee meeting. Any member of council wishing to speak is required to unmute their microphone to talk, and once they're finished, they should mute the microphone. And obviously, we're all in attendance, so you certainly just need to show by show of hands if you have something you want to ask about, either to the director or just make comments about, or if you have perhaps heard from any member of the public interested in this topic. No? And seeing none. Please be advised that a technical report is being considered by the committee this evening. Please be advised also that once the committee and/or council has made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of the passing would be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Jessica Dyson, at jdyson@westlincoln.ca. Anyone who is interested in observing council and/or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and miss the opportunity to attend applicable meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township's website for posting of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council and/or committee meetings. The agendas for meetings are posted on the township's website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also noted on the township's website for the public to view. If you wish to receive notices by email, it is suggested that you contact the township clerk to advise of your request and include your email address, along with your mailing address and your phone number. So seeing nothing further, this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 6:54. Okay, so moving on then to our regular agenda. Members of council, are there any changes in order of items on the agenda that you wish for this evening? And there are no appointments. And there is no one in the gallery again, unless Councillor Witteveen wishes to address, and he shakes his head no. So we'll move to consent agenda items then. So item P, 71-23. The Planning, Building, Environmental Committee hereby approve the following consent agenda items. Items 1 and 2B and are hereby received for information. Item 3B and is hereby received, and the recommendation contained therein be approved with the exception of. And Councillor Chichok?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to pull item 1 and number 3, please.
1 and 3, okay, thank you. So that the public are aware, number 1 is an information report, PD-49-2023, West Lincoln's top 5 recommendations from the Housing Affordability Task Force. Number 2 is a technical report, PD-54-2023, Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2017-70 as amended, Housekeeping Amendment Number 7, file number 1601-007-23. And the third one is a recommendation report, PD-50-2023, Service Level Agreement Planning with the Region of Niagara. So we'll begin then with the one that has not been pulled. So we need a mover, please, for that technical report, Councillor Bell. And a seconder, Councillor Bradrick. Thank you. So consent agenda items are the items that don't need discussion, so we'll just watch for a vote that the clerk will pull up. And a reminder that you're voting just on number 2 at this point in time. Okay, and that resolution carries. And so now, Councillor Chichok, will go to you for number 1, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure that we as a committee were familiar with what had happened in the past number of weeks, and the fact that the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Minister Paul Calandra, has sent correspondence to mayors throughout the province asking for their top 5 target items that are of importance to them as a municipality, whether it be large or small. And it came to my attention that there was not a lot of time, and the item was sent to mayors so that they could work the item. But we, having it here before us tonight, have the chance to take one quick look at it, because AMO also sent these recommendations in and did a fairly substantive review of what would be meaningful to municipalities, large and small, to have the appropriate support. And my computer's having a crazy here, but anyway, it's okay. That would have an opportunity for municipalities to be able to deal with the mitigation issues. The province is sending us an ask. They're saying if we don't answer, we will be penalized, further financially penalized, and I think I wanted to bring that out to the public, because we are forced to move into a theater where we are on very strict timelines to get planning approved, that planning is happening, but building is not happening in this community, as with hundreds of others, because developers can't come to side with who it is that's going to pay for the infrastructure. And municipalities can't afford it, nor can regions. And so with no one able to front end or put in the servicing required for all of this growth, people all want to be first. And with so doing, it makes it very difficult to be able to get anything done because municipalities have hit their limit in debt financing, and we will not be able to serve communities, and developers don't feel it's their right, their obligation, to put in the services with the given structure that we're facing. Yet municipalities are going to be punished again for not meeting the targets that are applicable to their areas, that are the planning and building targets to get new homes built in their municipality or surrounding municipalities. This is a very complicated issue, and what it really I wanted to make known was the minister wants to know what we think now. From a government that was very strategic in doing things about the Greenbelt, no, then we didn't. Oh, then we did. And guess what? We're not doing anything about it now. We're putting it all back together like the Greenbelt. The province has also done things to force municipalities to pursue quick drive-by development, and yet do it well, do it right, and not cause undue expense to the province, to the municipality, or to the public. I'm really struggling with this ask for the 5 top. And I say that to you with the greatest respect, Madam Chair, because I know, Madam Mayor, you and staff have taken a look at them, have tried to formulate something. I looked at AMOs, and AMOs are equally impressive and important. They all are. And they come from a report that was done comprehensively across the province in 2022 and released. But now, all of a sudden, we're looking only for the top 5. Well, the top 5 require a lot of the other ones to be completed in order to have any substantive progress go forward. And I'm not condemning anyone who participated in this. I'm actually complimenting all of my colleagues at council or at staff levels. But I am really, really concerned that we just deal with this and pass it, because it is so important, and yet every municipality is so individual. And yet, here we are with only 5 recommendations to be had and no time to discuss it, no time to make it ours. I'm terribly concerned that the next step will be that the province will come down and tell you, well, you know what, the whole bunch of you don't know what you're doing because everybody's asked for something else.
Well, I was just going to say, so likely that will happen. So I think that's why, Councillor, I'm happy that you brought it up. I think that is why AMO, actually representing all of us, have come out with their letter that says all of those things are important, essentially, except for the couple that we don't like. So they took the reverse approach to that. So I would like to tell you that the first letter came on September the 15th, and it turned out that some heads of council in some of the municipalities did not even share that with staff. They just did it on their own. I obviously went to staff right away and said we need to do this together and decide what's important. And even at that, it was a lot of back and forth, because even among the group of people that were looking at it, people thought the different things were important. On September 25th, another letter came out. And I quoted from that because I wasn't able to print it, but this was part of it as well. And I directly quote from the letter. For clarity in preparing your responses, council endorsement of the responses is not required. Underline, not required. Responses may be prepared by heads of council reflecting their leadership roles. So it didn't indicate talk to staff. It did not indicate, it really was a top of mind. And things come quite regularly that ask for feedback from the mayor. This, though, of course, came from the Market Housing Division of Municipal Affairs. And so it had a totally different level when it came. The Task Force Housing Affordability Task Force is about this size. Some of you may have looked at it. Some of you maybe have not. But we couldn't at first even figure out the 74 versus the 55 recommendations. But as it turned out, they were numbering them differently because there were parts A, B, C, D to some and A, B to others. And so, the bottom line is, we've sort of done our best. Some members of heads of council have done this already and just directly sent it back already. It's due by next Monday, by the 16th, if you ever hope to get any money from the government. I'm not sure that we are, under their current standards, open to some, acceptable, whether we're even within the realm of being able to receive any, but we're not going to chance that. This came to you tonight simply so that you are aware. It was really more for transparency, so that you're aware that we've been struggling with this, that we've had this opportunity. And the things that we've looked at are just things, mainly through planning, that we felt would benefit a smaller community like ours in terms of those. So I'm sure that you've had a chance to read what those recommendations were. Sorry? Yep, just a minute.
Madam Chair,
Just 1 second.
just when you're done.
Okay, so I am going to open it up. I just wanted to explain where we were in terms of letters and the timing of that. Our response will, which has not been fully written yet, will indicate our choices, but will also support the AMO recommendations. So now I'm finished. Councillor Trombetta, go ahead.
I was just going to echo my colleague at the table. She made a couple of valid points. I think she's kind of put it in more very good terms, but I'm just going to be blunt and say I think it is a complete waste of time. We have a shortfall of hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure, and they want us to find housing. So why am I going to put this on my staff to find affordable housing when we need money for infrastructure?
We do. Absolutely.
And I'm not talking, 100 million. We're probably up in 200 to possibly 300 million to get any affordable housing in this municipality. So why put the work on our staff to find affordable, have a task force, when this should be going back to the province to say, how are you going to give us the money so it doesn't got to go on our tax base to pay for this infrastructure? And a lot of people aren't going to realize, and I guess maybe it's just hitting a nerve, because all you're hearing on the news lately and people on podcasts, and we need homes and we got to build. Why aren't they building? We have so much land mass. We have so much, and it's striking a nerve on every podcast, on every radio station. Well, where are you giving us the money for the infrastructure? The billions and billions shortfall to put the houses on there. So until that gets resolved and we got an answer, why are we wasting our time on trying to find affordable housing?
Well, we're wasting our time only in that we are responding to a request from the Minister of Municipal Affairs. That's all we're doing. We've not spent time or money, other than a little bit of staff time looking at these, a little bit of my time looking at these, and trying to at least be able to respond in a responsible way to a request from the minister.
And I agree.
That's it.
Maybe, like I said, Madam Mayor, I just think it's just striking a nerve, because everybody is
Everybody's
complaining about house
asking and
pricing,
nobody's-
there's not enough homes,
Yeah.
but no one is talking about infrastructure that we do not have in
Exactly.
various municipalities in Ontario.
All municipalities, and the region was talking about it this morning. I was on Councillor Woodaveen's public works in the region, and the main topic was looking at money for infrastructure. If you're, it's the same thing.
That's just my comments,
all the
how
way
it
through.
struck a
And I
nerve, so.
appreciate them, because your frustration is the frustration at all levels. Truly it is. Okay, Councillor Chichok, back to you.
Just as a wrap to what it was I was saying, is that the 5 you've chosen are no more or less important than the 5 that were chosen by AMO, which are no less or more important as a compendium of the 70-odd that were picked, nor the task force's items. So my point, Madam Mayor, without suggesting that there was not value to what it is that you worked to put together, is you can't do the 5 that you want or the 5 that AMO wants without looking at the rest of them and seeing how they're all tied together, and without throwing all the questioning and task forces to the side and starting to do, like Councillor Trombetta has said, starting to take action and make a difference, or force everybody to grow in the appropriate way, follow the pipes and just keep going, and stop with the OMB intervention, et cetera, pardon me, the OLT now.
Yeah.
Could be something else tomorrow. But whatever it is, it's time to stop talking. It's time to start looking at what's been provided to them, and whatever they choose, they better look at what the 5 that anybody chooses is predicated on, because the whole thing is important. Let's just decide that we're going to start doing it. Thank you.
I do feel, I agree. I think that this was the new minister's way of trying to engage with municipalities. And so he was newly appointed, and his response was, we'll reach out and we'll see what's important. And that's where we sit. While we're talking about that, though, we do need a resolution just to accept it, not to do anything else with it. But I do want you to know that as of last week, the letter that was requested, that staff put together, that went under my name in terms of letting AMO members and the minister know about the challenges faced by smaller developers, as per our discussion the last time, that letter has gone. So it has gone to other municipalities, and it has gone to the minister. So that part has been done. Very thoroughly explained all of the points that the developer who spoke to us raised in terms of the difficulties trying to deal in this day and age with growth. Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Did you not say initially that he reached out for us to have 5 points, but if we didn't, we would be penalized?
If I don't respond by the 16th.
So that's not really a friendly way of asking for 5 points. That's a dictatorship that was eliminated in Europe in the Second World War, wasn't it? Or am I mistaking this for some other country?
Maybe.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make, there's a
that's-
difference between a suggestion and a demand.
Well, it didn't come in the same letter. The first letter was a suggestion, and then another letter came. Yeah, so, okay. So, Councillor Chichok, I'm presuming you want to move number 1, which is just an information report?
I do, thank you. Having made the comments that you've so kindly listened to, I will.
Thank you. And someone to second that, please. Councillor Bell. So, Mr. Clerk. Have you voted, Councillor Rayner?
I'm just curious why, normally don't, oh, yeah, I guess we do them one at a time.
Well, it's because two were pulled. Two were pulled, so we're doing the first one, but you haven't voted yet, sir.
It hasn't come on this. Oh, it has now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. We would have done a bunch, but we only had one left. So we did one, and now we're doing the other 2 that were lifted. Thank you. Okay, we're good? Okay, so Councillor Chichok, you also pulled number 3, which is the recommendation report, read the surface level agreement planning with the region of Niagara.
I was in a really pulling mood this week.
You were, but that's okay.
Unfortunately, I found time to spend time away from the family and chose to look at my agenda. So I'm a little bit concerned about this report. I see it as an appropriate thing to be done in an interim basis as councils. This is a report, sorry for the public's, just is a service level agreement between the region of Niagara and the municipality regarding planning services. And I'm struggling with this because as I read through it, I saw it as an item that is appropriate for a short time, perhaps 6 months or a year. And at the end of that time, a review of what it is that wants to happen can happen. And maybe before I say anything else, Madam Mayor, we should have the director explain what the first chart was that is attached to this, because it comes without an interpretive color explanation.
It came with color coding, but it didn't have anything.
But
to
I'm not really
indicate
sure what
that.
I'm doing. So before I put my foot in my mouth, and I do hope that the director, I did give him a heads up that I'd be asking that, so I hope he can do that for us.
Okay, so Mr. Treble, to you, please.
Certainly. Can I paint a little bit of a context as I answer, if you don't mind?
Please do.
Just to sort of put it in perspective, back before Christmas last year, Bill 23 came down the pipe. I think it was 23. It was either that or 109, one of those two. And it sounded like everything was going to happen yesterday. So the region fairly quickly called meetings of all local municipalities in the region. Bev and I, the CIO, and the Director of Planning were invited from all municipalities to sit down and sort of brainstorm about how to move forward in the absence of a regional level of government having control over planning, thinking that we had to figure this out in like 3 months max kind of deal. And here we are almost a year later, and we still don't know what the proclamation date is going to be for it. But, so the quick thinking basically for smaller municipalities like us and Waynfleet and Pelham and Lincoln and Grimsby was, we don't have all the resources the region does. We don't have all the skill sets and expertise the region does. We're probably going to have to draw on them. And so how do we do that? And how do we do that in a sort of formalized arrangement? And that's how we ended up here. So as part of all of that work, we had probably, about 5 meetings, I think, where we sort of all sat around and chatted through. We had some small group sessions. The material that's the first attachment in this report is an outline of the work that was done. So they talked to each of us. They identified all of the different types of service that could be provided to each municipality, and then they identified by each municipality what we were interested in and what we weren't. So green identifies those services that municipalities were interested in the region sort of providing right out the gate. From a staff perspective, if we need to go forward and we need to have the region help us, these are the ones that we obviously need to turn to the region for. Yellow is an add-on. So yellow is something that people thought of later on and added to the list of things that they were looking for the region to provide. As the agreement is written right now, as I recall, it starts 90 days after proclamation, whatever date that is, and is in effect for the term of this council, plus I think it's 90 days added on to give us time to get a new agreement in the new term of council. And if you want to, as it's written right now, if you want to get out of it, it's a 120-day notice period to get out of this agreement as proposed here. So that might help give you a bit of a flavor of what we've presented to you. It's simply a solution with respect to dealing with environmental provisions and regulations and archaeological provisions and regulations that we don't have in-house, and a number of other things that the region has historically provided to us.
Thank you. Councillor Chichok, do you have further questions?
Mr. Treble did not mention what the white says. So the white means... The white suggests that Welland doesn't want anything. St. Catharines only wants a little bit of this and that.
The bigger, through you, Madam Mayor, the bigger municipalities are kind of going it alone a little bit. Fort Erie is possibly going it alone as well, and Welland definitely. Welland didn't even participate. Past the first meeting, didn't even show up.
So Lincoln is also excluded then, because that guy oh yeah, the diagram down here.
I would have thought
There's a lot
Lincoln
of
was in.
exits. Take a look.
Okay, so,
Anyway,
so our CAO would like to chime in, so perhaps because she was part of those meetings, she might be able to answer what's going on with that. Just one.
And just to round out, thank you for acknowledging me. To round out what our director was saying was the region was, their planning responsibilities were removed, and they're now only responsible for growth policy and servicing. And so they had a whole cadre of services that they had always done on our behalf, and we'd always use them. So when Brian the director is talking about the proclamation, that means when the bill or the regulation is put in effect, where the region will no longer be officially responsible. So this is why this list is here, and where you see white pieces are there's sort of it was a bit of a menu where municipalities could pick and choose, and there's some municipalities had more services on hand. If we don't go this route, then we would have to go out and hire specialists with respect to consultation with First Nations, with archaeology, with environmental issues, those sorts of things. So it was quite a complex procedure, and I will just add as well that these were really facilitated discussions where the consultant was brought in and really helped us think through how we were going to manage in this new world.
Councillor Chichok, back to you. Anything further?
Yes, very much so.
Go ahead.
This graph worries me only because, yes, the region is being stripped of a lot of its planning responsibilities and does have some of the facts in there for us. Some of the municipalities have looked at it and said, no, we don't want anything. Some have picked, one would say, a preferred list. But I worry about getting involved in just a carte blanche without further discussion and sending this back to staff and having these things renewed and reviewed, because proclamation hasn't happened. But secondly, as the pot shrinks, we now will be asking the region to provide services to a smaller compendium of people. So that has an impact on what the cost could be. I understand they've given us a costing, but it will be reviewed in 6 months, according to the agreement that sits in place now. I also worry that if this is going to go through to the 4th year of our term, that a loss will be felt if the council of the day does not complete the review of what is happening here at the regional level providing services. What if there's a large vacancy rate or an exit rate at the region? Will we be getting the finest, the best, and those that know our position well? If we have a chance, and I'm not saying it's going to be cheap, but Madam Mayor, it doesn't appear that the province really wants cheap, and we are going to suffer. I'm sitting here saying I've been elected to do what's right for our community. People say to me all the time, I really don't want West Lincoln to become another small community growth not that far from us. So how are we going to do this? And if I understand from their director, there's dispute resolution, there's costs, there's all that other kind of stuff. But if we don't like it, and if we are amongst a minority of the group that is left, what really is the cost? Because there's only one taxpayer. So how can we burden the region with the cost of our planning, which is now being provided to the smaller group of communities? And is that really more economical and affordable if we're not all compelled to do it? So it's something that sounded great at the time. It's not proclaimed yet. A lot has changed. And I really don't know whether or not we are going to be able, I mean, I could go through this report. I did, and I had a lot of questions, which I don't want to burden this committee with. But suffice it to say that I'm troubled by the fact that we are now trying to do something, and I know Councillor Woodavine is in the audience, and I don't hold this against him, by the way. It's just that the agreement sounds like it is already old and dated. It should allow for us to have an out after a year, not the 120 days. But in so doing, if other people do it, now all of us are going to cost, it's going to be a smaller pot, and it's going to cost somebody, some taxpayer in Niagara, more to provide the services that are in this agreement. So how long is it really good for? And then what alternatives are there, given that we're kind of facing the most supposedly growth if we can ever figure out a way to provide the services and get moving on this puppy? And then what's everybody going to say? But look at that West Lincoln, they're costing us a small fortune. And I was uncomfortable with some of the language in what I read, because it sounded like it could become an us and them. It may not be sufficient, and I'd really like to have a chance to have our staff review the agreement, talk to us again, provide us with, I understand there's a section in the report that says current situation, but I don't think that the current situation puts into perspective some of the what ifs. What if 100 people leave the region? What if what if all of these costs are now so high that the region has to pass them on to us? What if there is a dispute? We're now disputing with other professionals that are on the municipal side. Should we be going to an outside consultant that could provide us with independent advice that is bulletproof if we go to an OLT? Because nobody's suggesting the OLT gets out of the way and just lets us build. But yet, so if the region is out of planning, it's a great idea for little towns, but maybe not for West Lincoln. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But I'm terribly troubled by this report. I'm terribly troubled because the agreement sounds like it should be revised to allow for lower tier municipalities to become more in charge. And you guys can all dispute if we're in charge or not, because we get to say no, but we have to fight our colleagues at a different tier. Is that where we're going? And that troubled me a lot. So if we don't like what the region staff say, who are working for us at a fee that we've got, which might be different because other people are out, and we don't, are we fighting with them now? Are we going to the OLT to get them sorted out? I know there's a mediation portion in this somewhere, but is that the way we're doing planning? Is it in our control, or is it in the regions? Those are some of the questions I have. I hope my colleagues don't think I'm being argumentative today, because I'm very concerned, and I'm very concerned about the fact that we are going to be amongst the pained by the amount of growth that wants to come our way if we ever sort it out.
And your questions are valid, because there are major concerns with some of the other municipalities, which was why Fort Erie, for example, isn't. They went the opposite route and started hiring planners to cover a lot of different areas. Certainly more planners than we could do, but they have put together a crew of people hoping to cover, and they have the Native Friendship Center there, so they have their Aboriginal content, that they can reach out to people directly and do their due diligence there. So there are a lot of things going on, a lot of moving pieces. Is there
So,
anyone
Madam
else?
Mayor, if I could, at the appropriate time, I would say that we should refer this back to staff with the idea of our staff looking at what it would cost us versus if there were very few people at the region. What is this cost to the region? What are we looking at as far as the kind of services? Because it doesn't have to be staff we hire. It can be consultants, and I know that that's not always the one way you want to do it. Large municipalities hire a whole bunch of things, and then they sit waiting for the files to come through. If we should be hiring a consulting group, or we should be hiring our own people on specific requirements, that would be safer for us to undertake the work that we have to do within a given number of days, because we also are under the problem of having to find this out and respond to developers.
And the time frame has been cut back completely.
So
yes.
with all of that, I'm saying, and we lose money, and we have to pay back fees. So if we want to be in control of our own destiny and not have to pay back fees, I would suggest we give it back and find out if we could do this by ourselves here. Would we be safer? I don't know. And what if there is amalgamations that are voluntary in the meantime? I don't know. But I think we need to look at the cost comparator before we get ourselves involved in an agreement which may become more costly than our hiring consultants or an additional staff person here and there.
Thank you, Counselor.
Am I upset?
I hope you're not. I hope you're just issuing some cautionary.
Thoughts?
Okay, good. Is there anyone else who wants to weigh in on this, one way or the other? So I think your appropriate time might be now, rather than just recommending
Just, if
for sure.
if I
Mr.
may,
Treble, thank you. I didn't notice.
just for context, to this point in time, to the best of my understanding, only Niagara-on-the-Lake and Pelham have passed reports to proceed forward with this type of an agreement. Waynfleet and St. Catharines were supposed to deliberate in September, but we haven't heard the update from them yet. So we're certainly not too late to have some further deliberation.
Okay, that's valuable input. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, then it is my desire to put forward a motion to send this back to staff to do a comparator of, and review the reports of Pelham and Niagara-on-the-Lake, but to question the other municipalities within Niagara as to their current desire to form part of these combined services. That's one. And number two, to look at the cost of hiring consultants or additional staff people versus the cost that could result from a smaller group accepting the region's pay-for-service framework.
So as you've tried to do that, our clerk has been
I know, he's got it
also trying to
differently.
keep up with this as well. So we, okay, okay, your microphone when you're ready. Okay, go ahead, please.
So council have a few options here. So there's a referral motion on that will need to be seconded, but I'll read the recommendation that I have right now just to make sure that it's acceptable. So that recommendation report PD-50-2023 regarding service level agreement, parentheses, planning, close parentheses, with the region of Niagara, be referred back to staff to report back at a future planning, building, environmental committee meeting in order for staff to do a further cost analysis of the services offered by the region compared to the potential lack of participation by neighboring municipalities or third-party consulting.
You captured every word I said, just as I said it. And it could be even sent back to staff rather than referral, if my colleagues would accept that. But whichever way you want to do it, Mr. Clerk.
I prefer being referred. So that will need to be seconded. Councillor Bell? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh.
Any further discussion now that we have that resolution on the floor? Councillor Rayner?
Yes, it's just that we've had meetings last month where we were told it takes a year to a year and a half because staff are busy. So how does this fit in with that? We had another one last week or last month, the same situation. If staff are already overbooked, they haven't got time, and it takes a long time for them to get back. In fact, I believe one report coming up on the noise or whatever, Mr. Treble mentioned it took 6 months to get back. So as much as Councillor Chichok has some good points and wants to get them addressed, I gathered from previous meetings, we don't have the staff or the time to do it in an expedient manner.
Well, from my perspective, the difference would be that this is an ongoing thing that they've been working on all along, as opposed to something that just kind of came out of the blue, that was just something that a resident brought forward that had not been looked at at all. This item has been under consideration since before Christmas last year, so it's just a matter now of tweaking it and getting further information, would be my assumption. I don't speak for staff. Councillor, Madam CAO, Mr. Treble, do you want to weigh in on that at all?
No, I think, Madam Mayor, that seemed to hit it on the head. I thought this is an item that's on our radar and needs to be sorted out so that we can achieve the planning timelines and everything. So I don't know when proclamation is. That's the unknown. But until that date, we have some time to sort it out.
And I have heard Commissioner Sergi say that many times too, about not knowing about proclamation date. It's just hanging over everyone's head. Anybody else? Madam CEO?
Thank you. Just to add to this, in the letter that we write back to Minister Calandra, perhaps we could also suggest that they reconsider removing the regional's planning responsibilities as they're considering the different options, because this has been quite disruptive. And for the region's point of view as well, they need to know who's in and who's out for the budget for the next year. So we have to sort of wrap this up in the next little while.
And the region is hopefully planning to have their budget finished before Christmas. So it is a current topic, needs to be wrapped up for sure. Okay, so we have a resolution on the floor, moved by Councillor Chichok and seconded by Councillor Bell. Councillor didn't come up for Councillor. And Councillor Bell, yours didn't come up either? Okay, good. Okay, well, that was consent, folks. But good discussion, and important that everybody understand the seriousness of the decisions that we make, for sure. Okay, so we're moving on to 11.1, which is item P72-23, Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, recommendation report PD 53-2023, draft official plan amendment number 66. Again, a cost-sharing issue, but a different cost-sharing issue. So, Mr. Treble, would you like to speak to that, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I could speak to it for just a second, I'd appreciate it. This is sort of another lingering issue that I was finally able to sort of get my head around completely. The work of the landowners to help pay for the urban boundary expansion studies, back when we signed those agreements in 2019, we fully anticipated that we could reimburse the landowners through the development charges process, because studies were an appropriate thing to be collecting money for to help offset the cost. And it was either going to be done at building permit stage or whatever. But through that process, the township could reimburse the developers. But all of that study material has been taken out of DCs, for lack of a better way of describing it. You can't collect and reimburse for studies anymore. So all of that work that was done, close to $2 million, we've put together a policy that sort of at the start says that you landowners have to work together as a group to basically figure out who owes who what, and who's receiving money, who's paying money. Make yourselves whole somehow there before you come forward with planning applications in the urban boundary. That's about the only way to really make that work. So the proposal as written is to say, okay, that's step one. Then step two is to give some authority with respect to front-ending agreements and cost-sharing agreements, getting to the point around, the front-ending of infrastructure costs and that we simply won't have the money in the pot to be able to do. So there's sort of two parts to this, Madam Mayor, as drafted. It's really policy work with respect to saying, to be a complete application, you guys need to sort out the $2 million, and then as you proceed forward, who's going to pay for what and how's that going to unfold? That also needs to be figured out. The discussions that are happening through mitigation, which are kind of confidential, do have an item with respect to that in the appeal. I think that's about as far as I'll go there. This is actually separate from that. We discussed it as part of the implementation public meeting, and so I'm carrying it forward with the anticipation that after you guys have seen it tonight, I can share it with all of the landowners and their lawyers, and they can have some discussion, and it really doesn't have to be part of the mediation. It's its own separate process, but then I can bring all of that messaging back, hopefully in the form of a policy set that allows for us to go forward with respect to the growth piece of the puzzle. So it's complicated, and it's been vetted by our legal a few times, but I fully anticipate it will be vetted and rewritten a couple more times before it's something that's finally worthy of approval. But it's here to at least start that discussion.
So thank you for that. And due to that complicated issue, as you explained, that's why I didn't go, first of all, to the recommendation and to get a mover and a seconder. I wanted a little bit more explanation about what this whole item is about. So we do have a recommendation coming out of that. One, that report PD-53-2023 regarding, dated October 10th, regarding be received. Okay, so is that issue. And that staff be authorized to circulate draft official plan amendment number 66 for input from landowners and agencies, and then to present a recommendation report to committee at a later date. So we do need a mover if we're going to discuss this further. Councillor Chichok, and a seconder. Councillor Trombetta. Okay, and now that we have a mover and a seconder, does anyone have any further questions for the director? Yes. Councillor Chichok.
One, and that is that we are circulating this to the people who matter in a decision-making process to get more houses built faster and cheaper. Unlike some people at higher orders of government that are not. That's my comment.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? All right. No further discussion on this. We're ready for a vote. And it came up quickly. Did everybody get it this time? Oh, the connection's not working, okay. Oh, okay. Whenever. Okay. So item 11.2, which is P73-23. So I noticed that our planner is not here. Are you presenting, Director?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, since there's really only Susan and I told her not to come
You told her
tonight
not
so
to
that
go.
I don't burn
Okay,
her
well, I just see
out.
her name here and then she's not, but
Yes.
that's okay. So it is Susan Smythe, Senior Planner, and Brian Treble, Director of Planning and Building. Re-recommendation report PD-51-2023. Applications for draft plan of vacant land condominium and zoning bylaw amendment, Abingdon Road and Regional Road 65 at Silver Street. ZBA file number 1601-016-22, and CDM file number 2000-91-22. And the recommendations are as follows. that report PD 51-2023 regarding recommendation report, applications for draft plan of vacant land condominium and zoning bylaw amendment, Abington Road and Regional Road 65, Silver Street, ZBA, file number 1601-016-22, and CDM file number 2000-91-22 dated October 10th, 2023 be received, and 2, that Section 34, subsection 17 of the Planning Act apply, and that no further public meeting is required. And 3, that applications for zoning bylaw amendment file number 1601-016-22 to change the development D zone to residential low density R1A-229 zone with site-specific provisions contained in attachment 3 be approved. And 4, that application for draft plan of vacant land condominium file number CDM 2000-91-22 be approved in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13, and regulations thereunder, subject to draft plan approval conditions contained in attachment 4 to PD-51-2023. And 5, that the applicant be advised that the township's draft approval of this plan of vacant land condominium will lapse 3 years from the date of approval, unless Township Council grants an extension of the approval period prior to the lapsing date. If an extension is requested, an updated review will occur, and revisions to the conditions of draft plan approval may be necessary at that time. So that's the kind of thing, Councillor Broderick, that you usually have to read. Councillor Trombetta, you'd like to move that?
Yes.
Thank you. And someone to second it, please. Councillor Rayner, since it's out in your way. Okay, great. Any discussion, questions, comments about this? Councillor Rayner.
Thank you. There was a public meeting held on this, I believe, quite a while ago. Was there not, Mr. Trouble?
Yes, that's correct.
The gentleman on the
West side.
on the west side that has all the poultry operations was concerned that the building, the closest of one of the residential buildings would be looking right down the third floor of his poultry barn. Am I not correct on that?
That is the right meeting, that's right.
So what has been done to resolve his concerns about that? Because it's always the farmers here first, and then people usually from the city want to move out to the country, and all of a sudden they have to listen to cock-a-doodle-doo at 4:30 in the morning, which happens to be practically within a stone throw of where they live. Has that been addressed, how that's going to be rectified?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the design of the condominium plan was adjusted slightly to make those lots on the very west end of that property a little bit longer in depth to give more room. And there's provisions to push the houses as far to the east on the properties as possible. And there will be a warning clause added to the title of each of the properties, notifying them that they're building in an agricultural area, and agricultural noises will be normal. Because it's in Hamlet, technically MDS doesn't apply, but we have done what we can to push the issue as far away within the confines of a lot fabric that works.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Tribble. You said there would be notification on deeds or whatever with regards to agriculture, but not only noise, but it's poultry, so it'd be smell?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but it'll be standard wording that speaks to all of that.
Okay.
Odor, noise, dust, hours of operation, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's important, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trombetta?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought the resident did come, I remember that meeting, and the resident did come in that Councillor Rayner is acknowledging to, and he was okay with it, just to make it aware. So I think he was not in total against anything, because he did come back afterwards and say that he was okay with everything, just to make it aware that, he's back there. Am I correct here, Brian, in some?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, generally his concern was just make sure people know who I am and where I am.
Correct.
He's a small operator, not that belittles him in any way, I don't mean it that way, but he's not a large, intensive operator with several batches per year or anything. He's a small-time operator, which, has a right to to farm as well. And so the language and the clauses should give adequate protection. Penny Lane is in the same area, and I'm not aware of any complaints from Penny Lane residents.
Penny Lane
So-
does pretty much back onto that property as well.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bradford?
Through you, Chair, to the Director. At that same public meeting, I believe there was some concerns around the drainage in that area. The report may contain that, but if you could just speak to, I believe there was a regional drain that needed to be looked at as well. If you could speak to if that's been resolved.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, we went back and forth with the region and the applicant on two issues, drainage and septic, because our staff was a bit concerned about the ability of the lots to accommodate the septic as proposed. In the end, those two issues were resolved enough to feel that we could move forward with conditions. They're not completely resolved, but they are resolved enough that it appears that there will be an appropriate way to accommodate septic and drainage. So the conditions of approval cover off the requirements to ensure that the region is satisfied and our septic inspector is satisfied with respect to septic permit issuance.
Because if I remember correctly, the concern of the resident was the further impact to their property on the east side of the Abington Road, correct?
That's right. So I'm not exactly sure of the details. I can't get into the details like Public Works could perhaps do it, but they have certainly reviewed the flow plans and volumes, and my understanding is with an on-site retention pond, they are able to contain volumes to appropriate levels.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rayner for the second time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Brian. There has been a number of residents over a number of years that have had concerns about drainage in that area. Specifically, probably on the east side, as Councilor Bradwick mentioned, there was one that had severe flooding, and it related to improper drainage of the private property behind the neighbors, that they blocked a ditch or something and it backed up into the, and I've been there when there's probably been an acre in front of their house that was totally underwater. And they said something about the size of the culverts along there, and even the culvert at 65 may be undersized. Have those issues all been looked at, Mr. Trouble?
Through you, Madam Mayor, again, I'm not the drainage expert, but my understanding is that there's sort of two drains that are traveling through the area, and they meet down to the sort of south and east of Abingdon. The one that has the drainage issues caused by an absentee developer who put in a lot of fill and messed up drainage flow through his property is the other tributary than the one that this property is connecting into. I don't think those issues will necessarily go away because they're a separate issue from this development, but this development will not make things worse, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Chichok, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Mayor. I heard the director, and so through you to the director, that the conditions were going to be warning clauses. Will they be put on title or in the purchase and sale agreement?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's a technical question. I'm not sure I have that answer tonight. I can certainly investigate before council. Definitely they would be in the real estate language. I would expect that they should be on title as well, but I have to find out whether or not that's even possible.
I think about that because, Madam Mayor, the Pearson Airport has subdivisions right up to its fence. And I remember a very famous mayor who insisted that there be signs all over the subdivision as it was being built, that it go on title. And so there are a lot of things that, as a result of that, have conditions on title so that no one can say, "You didn't tell me." And it, as the land changes hands, it keeps going. I would hate to think that that chicken barn or anyone else around it, when it's so close, would have a vulnerability to a change of ownership. So
I'll report back before council.
that will be good. And
Thank you.
my second issue is, Madam Mayor, having looked at these, at this report and looked at all of the attachments, is it possible that we can do something consistent in West Lincoln about Bismarck Road, Whitechurch Road, Silver Street? Having lived on the property, on the street for a while, It's just that when I'm looking at this, I'm not sure that a stranger would understand this was the same geography. So if we are asking for it, could we not have one consistent name?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Chichok might be asking for more than she's willing to bite off, but I'm more than happy to bring forward a public report with respect to the need to proceed with 911 renumbering of that street.
Oh, I don't think I want to go there,
But
Madam Mayor.
but that's what you're asking for.
Actually, Madam Mayor, what I was looking for was, as developers bring in projects, if they are supplying the attachments to a report, they should have the same names on the same street when they're submitting the maps, so that people don't get confused and say, that's all I want. And I'm sure that they can do that because the maps are being drawn.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, though some of them, of course, are coming from the outside in, and we don't necessarily have authority over the authorship of them. But if I may, I'd like to ask a question, and that is back to council as to what you officially consider the name of the road. Is it Silver Street, or is it Bismarck Road to Warner, and then it becomes Silver Street, or is it like?
Didn't we officially rename it?
We have not.
Silver Street? Yeah,
We
I
have
think-
not.
Madam Mayor,
I
we
thought
took
that through
Silver
911,
Street,
right?
we took Silver Street away from this place, and now it's Sterling, the
That's
one in
right.
town.
So that
and
the
left
other could be
Silver
named
Street.
Silver Street. Exactly.
So-
But step two, Madam Mayor, hasn't happened yet.
Well, you know what? We'll do that another night. All I was
That
hoping,
is not tonight's project, but Councilor Chichok makes a really good point. When you're looking at,
65.
exactly.
Officially, from a numbering perspective, it's my understanding that you're not to use the regional number as the road name. So,
Please,
well,
let's
if we
move
wait
on.
long enough, there might not be a region, and that's a moot point.
Let's not go there tonight. Thank you very much. So, is there any other, wait a minute. Councilor Rayner, is this serious? You've spoken twice
Well,
already.
It's just a point that Mr. Trouble just brought up, through you to Mr. Trouble. You said you shouldn't use the street name from the regional number, right? So what do they call Regional Road Highway 20? Because I lived on that, and my address was Highway 20. So what do they
There's-
call Highway 20?
You opened a
Have they got
can of
another name
worms,
for that
sir.
one?
No, I think,
6572, Post Office Box 6572, Smithville. LOR.
Or is that Gold Street?
Madam Mayor, that's another one on the same list.
We have several that we should be
lived on
dealing
that
with. So now we have continued discussion, and Councilor Bell wants to weigh in.
Can we get back to Councilor Rayner with an answer next week?
Yeah, or next year, perhaps. This is not going to be solved tonight, the names of the streets.
He was nice, he said,
Yeah, he is trying. Okay, go ahead. Your opportunity to vote. You're voting again, please.
Councilor Rayner, did you submit yours, or?
I did. I voted twice.
Well, it didn't record twice if you voted twice, so we're good. Thank you.
Electronics here, you know what it's like.
Okay. So item number 11.3 is item P74-23. Again, Brian Treble, Director of Planning and Building. This is a recommendation report PD-52-23, amendments to the noise bylaw. The recommendation is that one, recommendation report PD-52-2023 regarding amendments to the noise bylaw dated October 10th, 2023 be received, and that an amending bylaw such as the one attached to this report be passed to update and modernize the Township of West Lincoln noise bylaw, and that Mr. and Mrs. Rozak be notified of the changes accordingly. So I need a mover, first of all, please. Councillor Bradrick, and a seconder, Councillor Rayner. Are there any questions or comments? I know that we're going to Mr. Treble, but is there anybody who has a specific question about this? Councillor Chichok? I'll come back. Mr. Treble.
I only ask that for clarity, we make it very, very clear tonight that by changing the bylaw, this has all the things that we want in it that can be an offense, but it doesn't mean there'll be a policeman or someone to find the person in violation of it at the time that it occurs. like, this doesn't mean that if we have it in the bylaw, that all of a sudden, my motorcycle's sitting revving outside somebody's house, that I'm going to get a ticket. It's not a red light camera. It has to be seen by someone who can prescribe or fill out a ticket form. Am I correct?
Okay, so I think you're going to get that answer too, because not only are you asking that question, but also it was in line with the question that came from the people who brought it forward in the first place.
I know.
So we will go to Mr. Treble now, who received information, as we did, some of us did, asking further clarification about this issue, and Mr. Treble has provided some answers. So go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so I sent to the presenters on Sunday, I think it was, a copy of the report with the draft bylaw, and they emailed back this morning, first thing this morning, I guess, and it's addressed to Mr. Paylove. Good morning, Justin. We received the report from Brian Treble yesterday and understand this item is on the agenda for tonight's council meeting. Ed and I will not be able to be in attendance at the meeting. However, we do have some comments/questions we would like to have presented. We understand that William Riley will not be chairing this meeting as we would have reached out to him as well. However, we will copy him on this email in addition to his replacement for tonight's meeting. Comments/questions. So the first couple are comments. Firstly, we want to acknowledge and thank council members for their understanding and help in this noise matter. One cannot know what it is like to be awakened every morning by the explosive startup, which is underlined, noise from the truck in question, and most recently awakened close to 11 p.m. Thanksgiving Sunday when this vehicle was returning home after a week away. Secondly, we want to acknowledge and thank staff who took the time to research and find a solution to this noise bylaw issue. We know that there are many pressing issues that staff have to deal with. Thirdly, we have a question, in brackets, questions, with respect to the potentially new noise bylaw. Number one, when will this bylaw come, or when this bylaw comes to fruition, how can we expect township staff to hear this noise while it is happening if it is occurring before and after township hours? Number two, will there be a method by which we can report the noise to the bylaw officer if there is no coverage during off hours, e.g. soundbite, video with noise, etc.? And then three, will we be informed when/if the individual has been ticketed? So the answer, I think, is very timely with respect to Councillor Chichok's questions. This would be no different than any other bylaw in the sense that it's complaint-driven and written complaints. So my reply back to Kim and Ed will be that this is a new bylaw if it's approved and will require a new complaint, as their previous complaints have been closed because the bylaw that was being dealt with at that time gave us no authority to deal with this issue. That is assuming, of course, council is willing to support the draft bylaw. With respect to outside normal hours of business, we do have an understanding with our bylaw officer that his times are subject to change, and with the winter season approaching, he will be operating earlier in the morning and stuff like that. So I think the timing is actually appropriate with respect to trying to catch noise issues that may not be within normal business hours. With respect to the issue of has a ticket been issued, that technically is a confidential matter. We can certainly advise them that the complaint has been received and that we are acting on it. But in terms of who receives a ticket, that is not something that I would foresee reporting back to this complainant or any other complainant in a general nature. So I think that's my thoughts anyway, is that this would operate the same way as any other bylaw that we'd receive written complaints. It may take some investigating outside normal hours to catch them, but hopefully with the language that I've found in a bylaw that is already in use, and with the AMPS provisions that allow us to ticket daily as a new offense, that might have some effect in this issue. If this doesn't, then we might have to look at something else in terms of an approach. But
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chichok.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I love the idea of a noise bylaw, but you can expect complaints from 6472 Silver Street as well. I mean, I just sat here thinking about it, and you want to hear the wheeling of tires and the screeching of tires and the brakes and the accidents that happen at Port Davidson and Silver Street, wherever that is. But I think we need to think about, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do this, but if there's a new bylaw, we better think about the implications these bylaws have on our staff, because it won't be selectively that we'll be answering these noise complaints. We need to think about the cost and of additional bylaw officers. Because I can tell you, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday mornings, you better have somebody at the corner, because it is a noise fest. And from 5 o'clock on Sunday night until the end of day, the roar of vehicles down 65 is disgusting. So how are we going to just let me finish this.
No worries.
How are we going to face what I think will be an increased number of complaints once that gets the paper that we have a new noise bylaw with new thresholds? And will the police have the decibel level equipment in their trunk to be able to measure it, or will we be told that they can't afford it, or we have not we haven't equipped them? So then the complaint will be there, and no one will be there to register the decibel level, and ergo, no ticket issued. Just questions.
Mr. Treble.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the bylaw as drafted does not apply to traveling on a public road. This is simply areas where our bylaw staff can enforce, and public highways are a jurisdiction of the police and others. So I get the concern, but I think it must be another mechanism that's used to enforce that kind of issue. We can certainly deal with it if they're schooling around in Village Square Mall or something or other like that, but not on a public highway.
Or on the old Silver Street, now called Sterling. That
On
has a lot of
Sterling.
black rubber laying on
Correct.
it right now from last weekend, so go ahead.
But that's a
Councillor
public street.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are you finished?
Through Madam Mayor, to
Okay.
the director, I'm confused because this bylaw is suggesting mufflers as well. And we have a lot of Harley Davidson enthusiasts in this municipality, especially in the heart of Smithville. And they start their motorcycles, and Harley, the way it's manufactured, have extremely loud mufflers. So how are we, as a municipality, going to regulate things like this? So again, I have a lot of friends that have them as well, and to be honest with you, I know one that's across the road from where my mother lives in town that's going, which you have relatives too that live there, Councillor Chichuk. So I'm really confused on how this is going to be regulated with especially mufflers and loud noises. Can you touch on that if you can?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as I was discussing with others today, this is a bylaw that's written to deal with noise at the point of reception. So it's much more focused on what the impact is to you as the complainant, not the actual equipment. But the bylaw as written is drafted to say that if it's legal equipment for that machine, then you're exempt from the bylaw. It's only those instances where you've done add-ons or changes that are not manufacturer or whatever the word is specified that would qualify for compliance issues. So it's not meant to apply to a Harley Davidson that's designed to be noisy if that's the way it was designed.
True, okay, but there are modifications made, and how are we really going to monitor modifications?
The discussion there basically has been that we would issue a ticket if we got a complaint, and it would be up to the owner to provide evidence that in fact what they've done to their machine is compliant with the rules. And if they have, then their ticket would be waived at that point.
Okay, and I get it. I'm just trying to protect the enthusiasts out there, and just forgive me, I'm going to be a little bit long-winded. So, is it because someone doesn't like the sound when that person starts up to go for that ride on the Sunday morning, and it lasts for a couple seconds? So that means bylaw is going to come out there because they think they made some modifications. Like, as those, let's use that for instance, as those Harleys start up, it's loud. We all know it's loud, and it goes down the road, and you can hear it from blocks away. Right away, if a resident complains, that's it. I think it's just kind of.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can see us getting complaints, but I can't see us issuing tickets unless we're of the opinion that there is some legitimate basis upon which to issue that ticket.
Okay.
That was my perhaps. be
That's
different,
I just wanted to
Yeah.
be clear that, there
Yeah.
are enthusiasts and there's also people with, we're known, and I know the Madam Mayor has suggested before, we're one of the biggest areas where classic vehicles in West Lincoln that have done multiple modifications to many classic vehicles that are allowed. So I just want to protect the residents that are enthusiasts in West Lincoln.
So it's a fine balancing act between protecting residents from undue noise at inappropriate times versus,
Our classic cars, I want to keep
Exactly.
them in West Lincoln happy and
Absolutely.
drivable. So,
Good.
thank you,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bell and then Councillor Bradford.
I hear both sides of the argument, and being a motorcycle enthusiast and owning quite a few Harleys, they are noisy, but more noticeable when you sit there and you want to make the noise with it. A normal person starting the bike and leaving is not an issue. And I think most residents don't have an issue with that. Your issue comes when you get a group of them, or that individual and his friends come to pick somebody up and you got this noise. Can you regulate it? Probably not. Because, as was pointed out by Mr. Trouble, these exhaust systems come with these bikes, and you can purchase upgrades to make it noisier, which are legal. So, for us to, well, we have to take the complaint, I understand that, but you're never going to be able to really act on it because you don't have a leg to stand on. You're going to give the guy a ticket and he's going to fight it, and it's going to cost us more money to fight this thing with that individual. So I think we need to kind of rethink our handing out tickets for noise, specifically on motorcycles. So,
Thank you.
anyway, just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you.
I can wait, Madam Mayor, it doesn't matter.
Shall
But I was,
we, okay, so let's hear from Councillor Bradford in case it's
Sure.
something that you can join together or
Sure.
might be more of the same, I'm not sure.
Just a quick question through you, Chair, to the Director. I can't see within the written bylaw or the report, what is the penalty that will be imposed on Councillor Bell when he revs up his Harley?
I was thinking it might be the one in Jason's garage. Through you, Madam Mayor, that part is not attached to the bylaw, which I noticed today as well, so I'll have to find out and report back. It's a staff, it would be a staff proposal. It does not need to go to the province for ratification, so I'm assuming it's somewhere in the range of like $200 or something for the ticket. That would be my thought, but I don't actually have that number in front of me. But just on top of that as well, yeah, I don't see staff going crazy with tickets in this instance because we acknowledge the fact that there are costs to issuing tickets and there are costs to fighting tickets, so we're not going to be crazy in that regard, but it might have effectiveness if once or twice a ticket is issued and that causes people to sort of just be a little bit careful because, we can actually issue tickets and they mean something and they have to be dealt with. The good part, though, to answer Terry's question or Councillor Bell's question with respect to costs, the AMPS process is done more or less in-house with a joint cooperation agreement with all lower-tier municipalities in the region. So it keeps the cost down. We're not going into POA, and we don't need lawyers for that part of the process. So, if it is challenged up through the ranks, it's simply my staff making a presentation to a chairman who has been hired jointly by all the lower-tier municipalities. But we're hoping that the ticket approach plus the wording is effective enough to just sort of make sure people think, okay, I'm legal, I'm good, no worries.
Okay, so thank you for that. So there was a question at the very beginning about why things take the time that they do sometimes for reports to come back. If you remember that was a couple that presented to us that they were very concerned about what was going on in their own neighborhood. So I think that what staff has done is come back with a reasonable response to what the concern was that was raised to council. And so we still have some concerns, but obviously staff has looked at all of those avenues as well and have come up with what they think is best at this point in time. So all good concerns, all good discussion, but I think we're ready to, Councillor Teachout, one more thing?
I am concerned that we are going to have bylaw officers out ticketing without equipment that reads decibel limits. So now we have judgments happening that will ask for tickets. And if you haven't modified your Harley or your Honda pedal bike, you might get a ticket that then you have to go to court, or go somewhere, pardon me, and demonstrate that you have kept it in its original enhanced status, like, you bought the upgrade, and that's the way it came. How are we doing this if we're not going to decibels? And will we be doing it with people who are trained for it? Because otherwise, we're causing McGilla here that is going to be problematic on enforcement.
Sorry, we're causing what?
Well, I mean, are we
There was a
going to
word, I
have
didn't catch it.
are we going to be using decibel reading equipment? Right.
So go
this
ahead,
is-
Mr. Treble.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, that was part of the deliberation that staff kind of worked
Right.
through, and I don't see West Lincoln being ready or prepared to handle decibel readers yet. I think we could probably find one if we had to. I know of one person in the township that's trying to offload one, but I don't have trained staff. So this seemed like a reasonable approach being used elsewhere that allows us to deal with point of reception, not point of source, and try to get at the heart of the matter with the issue between neighbors. Will it resolve everything? Will it work properly? I don't know. I took the wording from the city of Guelph, and I'm not aware, based on their website, that there are a lot of issues with the bylaw. It seems to be operating effectively based on what I'm understanding. Pelham has a point of source bylaw for noise. We could certainly go down the road of that model if we need to, but I'm not convinced or ready to go there yet. I'm thinking, let's try this one, see how it works. It's really just an add-on to what we had, and I think the effective part will be amps, but we got to be careful, to Trumbetta's point, in terms of when we use that.
Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back years ago when I used to be on the highway, the Highway Traffic Act, for example, you could have a regular car, but if you go in a stop position and you do a burnout, you can get a ticket for that. But that doesn't mean the car was souped up to race. It just means that you're being stupid, and you have a chance that you could wreck your car or hit somebody else or whatever, so it's for a safety reason. So this bylaw, to me, is just for the people that don't use common sense. I mean, if they're purposely making the noise, you can get a motorcycle and rev it up. I was getting gas the other day in town, and this idiot came in there, and just before he shut it off, he had to rev it. My ears were just about ringing. There was no need to do that. He could have just pulled in, shut the engine off, and filled up, but he had to make a show of it. So it's situations like that where people have something that they could be annoying with, and they like to let everybody know that they've got one. And those are what I think the bylaw is for. The average person that has any respect or care of anybody else or for their own sanity would not be doing these stupid stunts anyways. So it's like most of the laws we make in this country are because people have been stupid, and we have to make laws to protect everybody and consider everybody with the same stroke of the brush, when in reality these laws are pointed usually to people who do things that shouldn't be done, but we have to make a law that covers everybody in order to be politically correct. And I think this is the same situation with this. This is no different than, if you go 50 kilometers over the speed limit, we'll haul your car away. Well, you should see the number of offenses this year. It's been a record year for the OPP pulling cars off. It's just people being stupid. Well, we have the law because they're stupid people. So that's the way it
Okay,
works.
so enough about all these people.
But that's what I think this is all for. And the
So-
other thing is, the bylaw officer is not going to run out every time you make a phone call.
No.
And the chances are, if it's an individual that's just revving it for a second, by the time you finish making your call, they've already gone down the road. This is for people that are doing it regularly in a consistent spot, that are annoying people a lot because they're always there. That's really what this is for.
And I think that's why it was brought to us. So let's vote. I think we've hashed this one to death.
Councillor Rayner, you were young at one time.
Okay, just,
A long time ago, those
okay, you two. We're ready to vote. Make sure your machines are ready. It's in front of you. Okay, and that also carries. Okay, which takes us to number 12, which is other business. Members of committee, matters of an informative nature. So Councillor Rayner, anything this evening? Councillor Chichok, anything this evening?
Other than the fact that Gainsborough plowing match was had today, and it was a very full event with a number of participants who enjoyed the day, and there were several winners who went home today very happy with their furrows being judged.
Very good, thank you. Counselor Bell, anything? Counselor Bradford? Counselor Trombetta, no? Madam CAO?
No, thank you.
Okay, so I do, and I think you're expecting it, so this is no different. This has to do with our NPEI, which will take place next week. So I want you to know that, as members of council are aware, we have 3 members interested in being appointed to the NPEI board as West Lincoln's representative. So each of those 3 people has prior experience on this particular board. And so after discussion with many of the candidates, I did reach out to the NPEI, as did our clerk, and we received 3 guiding documents. So the first document that came back was the corporate governance introduction and overview. The second of particularly value to the group was a corporate governance director qualifications. And the third piece that came from Sue Forche, actually, who was very, very helpful, was a board matrix to be used by any boards looking for new members of their board, looking at what their board qualifications would be, who they would be looking for to complement their board. And so this has been vetted by the clerk and by the deputy clerk. And the information from the NPEI documents was imposed upon the board matrix, and we're going to give each of you one of those as a bit of homework. Former teacher, you know, as you go home. So this is not to be ranked, and it's not to be scored in any way. It really is just for your own personal due diligence to look at the kinds of things that the NPEI are looking for under various categories in terms of their board representative. And so next week at the admin, we're going to have, as part of confidential, an opportunity for you to put those thoughts that you've had about who you think would best round out that NPEI board from our West Lincoln representative and do a secret ballot. And hopefully one ballot will do. If not, if we have a tie, we'll re-vote, I guess, and we'll work through. NPEI, we're not interested at all in having any input into this decision-making other than sending us the materials and saying you recommend someone. I know there was a bit of discussion about why can't we send all 3 names and let them choose, and they would have none of that. They really would like us to appoint somebody, and then they will commit to that. So I thank those who've had discussions with me about this. The documents are there if anybody wants to look at them, and our clerk has a 1-page, I think it's front and back, just showing different categories, and hopefully you'll just have some time during the next week to read over each of those, and as you do, think about the 3 candidates and be ready to make a decision as to who. I think in fairness, in confidential, when we go in next week, we'll let each of the 3 candidates tell us a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 minutes about the things that they think they bring before the vote, so that you have an opportunity to hear from those candidates as well. And then we'll vote. And that would be part. Councilor, yeah, secret. No.
The clerk's department email out the information if you need it.
Okay, I think it was emailed. I think it was. If it wasn't, it can be emailed. But we also have a hard copy for you to take tonight. But it can come by email. I thought maybe we were ready to do that too. But okay. So these documents, I can do that too. Yeah, we have those documents on file. That I just printed up the ones that came. Okay, so our 3 candidates are Councillor Rayner, Councillor Chichok, Councillor Riley, are the 3 who've said that they're interested in doing that. And of course, each one of them has done this in the past. So it wasn't like we could say, well, we'll send somebody with experience. We have 3 good candidates. We just have to decide where we're going with this. And truly, it's been a tough one. We've been wrestling with the right way to do this over time because we have a very cohesive council. We'd like to keep it that way, working together, and we didn't want the decision as to who should be our representative to be anything but professional. So we reached out, got documentation, and have elevated the level of our discussions through our private due diligence and looking at who we think would do the job best. Councillor Bradford.
A quick question. I think the matrix is, a good starting point for sure, or maybe one of the most helpful parts of all of that. With the candidates' experiences before they were part of council or during council, is that something that we can have access to information prior to next week, so it will be helpful to come to the meeting to make those decisions? I know, I'm not looking for
Yeah,
resumes,
we
but...
didn't plan to do it that way for that reason, because then that meant work for somebody to put something together.
Right.
Which is why we considered looking at giving everybody a few minutes, and I don't mean like a 20-minute preparation, but a few minutes to just say, okay, in my background, I've done this, this, and this,
Right.
and I bring these qualities. I think when you see the matrix, you will see that it does refer to past experience. So if you're in doubt, you could reach out to any of the three,
Okay.
I think, and just ask those questions. Most of it is about things that you would know from our council. Background experience would be the thing, perhaps, that you wouldn't necessarily know, but hopefully that's what the candidates will bring forward.
I think that will be very helpful, for sure. Thank you.
Any further questions on that? No? You still, well, that's what we're trying to raise it above. But in any case, okay, so that's the end then of other business. New business, if anyone has anything of new business to bring forward tonight? And there are no confidential matters, and so at the hour of, what does this clock say, 8:19? I'll adjourn this meeting.